The Infinite Forbidden is the newest core booster set being released in the OCG, and in it comes some incredibly powerful cards, including the newest archetype in the Fiendsmith. What's potion? You got Matt here, and welcome back to another competitive Yu-Gi-Oh video. Today we're going to talk about the Fiendsmith Archetype, a brand new archetype being released in the Infinite Forbidden in the OCG, which will be coming to the TCG in late July. This archetype is a fiend-based archetype with light monsters, and it is incredibly powerful at setting up a really insane end board for any fiend-based archetype, but also can FTK very easily. So if you're excited for the video and for the Fiendsmith archetype, then make sure to smash the like button. If this video hits 250 likes, whenever we get a brand new release for archetypes in the OCG and the TCG, I'll make sure to bring you a video similar to this one. Also, if you like competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, including deck profiles, combo guides, meta discussions, and videos just like this one, you're gonna love this channel, so make sure to subscribe. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and we can't get there without your help. But with that being said, it's time for us to find out how good is the Fiendsmith archetype. Let's jump into it. So before I get started, yes, I'm behind the 8 ball a little bit. A lot of other creators have brought their Fiendsmith ideas and combos and videos up to you yesterday, but I want to bring it to you today because I really want to go in depth and find out what decks, what engines, what different combos are going to be important to know when it comes to the Fiendsmith archetype. So with that being said, what am I going to do today? Well, first thing we're going to do is actually look at the different cards in the archetype. What do they do? Figure out what cards they pair well with. We're also going to look at different engines that you want to adjust with this deck. And then of course, what cards are going to be weak to it. And I'm also going to finish off with a deck profile and of course a combo as well. So with that being said, let's talk about what the cards even do. The entire archetype revolves around one monster, being the Fiendsmith itself. It's a level 6 light fiend effect monster with 1800 attack and 2400 defense, and you can use each of its 3 effects once per turn. Its first effect is you can discard this card and add a Fiendsmith spell or trap from your deck. Second effect is you can target a Fiendsmith equipped card you control and one monster on the field, send them to the graveyard. Its third effect is that if this card is in your graveyard, you can shuffle one other light fiend monster from your graveyard into the deck or extra deck and special summon this card. Fiendsmith Lacrimosa is a level 6 light fiend fusion monster. It requires 2 light fiend monsters as material. It also has 3 effects, but you can only use the first and third one once per turn. If this card is fusion summoned, you can target one light fiend monster in your graveyard or banishment, either add it to your hand or special summon it. It has a continuous effect where monsters your opponent control lose 600 attack, and the third effect is that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle one other light fiend monster from your graveyard into the deck or extra deck and inflict 1200 damage to your opponents. Fiendsmith DecK is a level 9 fiend fusion monster. It requires the Fiendsmith plus 2 light fiend monsters. As a quick effect, you can negate the effects of a number of face-up cards on the field until the end of the turn, up to the total link rating of the link monsters equipped to this card as equip cards. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle one other light fiend monster from your graveyard into the deck or extra deck, then target one card on the field and send it to the graveyard. Fiendsmith Requiem is the archetype's link 1. It requires one light fiend monster. As a quick effect during the main phase, you can tribute this card as cost and special summon one Fiendsmith monster from your hand or deck. You can target one non-link light fiend monster you control, equip this card from your field or graveyard to that target as an equip spell that gives it 600 attack. You can only special summon Fiendsmith Requiem once per turn, and you can only use its second effect once per turn as well. Fiendsmith Sequentia is the archetype's link 2. It requires 2 monsters, including a light fiend monster. During your main phase, you can fusion summon one fiend fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling materials mentioned on it from your graveyard into the deck. You can target one non-link light fiend monster you control, equip this card from your field or graveyard to that target as an equip spell with this effect. Your opponent cannot target the equipped monster with card effects. Fiendsmith Tractus is a normal spell card. Both effects are hard once per turns. You can add one light fiend monster from your deck to your hand, then discard one card. And its second effect is you can banish this card from the graveyard, fusion summon one Fiendsmith fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material. Fiendsmith Sanctus is a quick play spell. If you control no face-up monsters or all monsters you control are light fiend monsters, you can special summon one Fiendsmith token, which is a level 1 light fiend monster. Also, you cannot declare an attack for the rest of the turn except with fiend monsters. If a face-up Fiendsmith monster you control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can set this card. Fiendsmith and Paradism is the deck's trap card. You can target one level 7 or higher light fiend monster you control, send all other cards on the field to the graveyard except that monster. If your opponent special summons a monster while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card, send one Fiendsmith monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. So what kinds of cards and engines are we looking to pair with the Fiendsmith archetype? Well, essentially, the most important thing is going to be, can we find that archetype of light fiend monsters? Because those pair incredibly well with this archetype because we have now a searcher for those specific types of cards. And there's a few that come to mind. The first of which is going to be the Magical Musketeers. You have all the basically main deck monsters are light fiend monsters, which is a really big deal, but you also now have access to the fabled monsters. Now, not all the fables are going to be fiends or light monsters in general, But there is a really good Light Fiend monster that just pairs extremely well with the copy of the Fiendsmith Tractus, which is going to be the Fabled Lurie. This card, when it's discarded, it's just a free special summon, which means you can get access easily to the Fiendsmith Requiem. It's a great card for the strategy and definitely will be seen play in this specific engine. The Fiendsmith Engine is great, but it gets even better when you pair it with a deck that really doesn't appreciate something like Nibiru because you give them easy protection from that card. How do you do that though? Well, you do it through the effects of DDD Wave High King Caesar, which is a rank 6 monster that requires 2 Fiend monsters. In this case here, 2 copies of the Fiendsmith. So what does this card do? Well, it basically insulates you from your opponent's summoning monsters or special summoning monsters with card effects. This is really good because it can be activated twice, so you can protect yourself from Nibiru once on your turn, and then again you can do something on your opponent's turn when they try and do something else. You can then go ahead and do your plays uninterrupted and make a really solid end board that's going to be very difficult for your opponent to out. There are other cards you can go into with these 2 copies of the Fiendsmith that you end up having. You can go into a copy of Beatrice, for example, to get 2 Foolish Burials, which is going to be really nice, but you can also go into the Unchained Soul Lord of Yama, which is great because you can get your Unchained plays going as well. And the fact that Sharvar was limited to 1 copy, I don't think it's now going to come off the list for a long time because of the access they have to the Fiendsmith now, which is a great card for that strategy. So I'm of the belief that Beatrice should be a banned card, but for the time being it's not, and that is a problem here because the Fiendsmith is a great card at making Beatrice, which means that you can use the effect of Beatrice to send both Transaction Rollback and Ghost Meets Girl to be able to then lock your opponent, or lock both of you rather, out of summoning monsters from the deck, extra deck, or hand for the rest of the turn, which is a really big deal because you can essentially FTK your opponent that way. Now, obviously, a lot has to go right. Your opponent can't have basically any copies of DD Crow or something like a Bestial, or of course Nibiru or Imperm, or whatever the case might be really, even Ash Blossom. Pretty much any hand trap will stop that line, but if they don't have a hand trap, then that line will essentially just win a game, and on top of that, it doesn't even use the normal summon, which is a huge deal. The Fiendsmith Engine is also incredibly compact. If you want to play it with the fewest cards possible, all you really need are going to be 3 copies of the Fiendsmith, 1 copy of the normal spell Tractus, 1 copy of the Fabled Lurie as well, and then you need the Link 1 Requiem in your extra deck, as well as maybe whatever level 6 or rank 6 monster you want to go into with these cards. In reality, that's 5 cards in the main deck and 1 to 2 cards in the extra deck, and that's really all you need. I also wanted to mention that in Legacy of Destruction, we're getting a new level 6 monster in Nightmare Apprentice. This is a free level 6 summon to the field as long as you have a discard, which is a great card to have access to in a deck like this that wants to take advantage of level 6 monsters. So I believe that with this card here and the Fiendsmith as well, we're going to have a lot of really powerful level 6 based monsters in a format coming up soon. But with that being said, here are some of the combos you can do with the Fiendsmith cards. So I have 3 different Fiendsmith combos to showcase for you today. The first 2 are going to be using pretty much exclusively the Fiendsmith cards, and the third combo is going to be taking into consideration the Unchained engine because these 2 engines pair incredibly well together because they're both Fiend monsters, which is obviously really strong. So we're going to start off with this 1 card combo with the Fiendsmith itself. It is a fantastic 1 card starter. So we're going to start off by using its effect, discarding itself to add a Fiendsmith spell or trap. In this case, will be Tractus, which will add Lurie, discarding Lurie, and then using the effect of Lurie to be able to summon itself back to our side of the field. Because it's a Light Fiend monster, I should say, we can use it to link summon into our copy of Requiem. We're then going to use the Requiem effect, attributing itself for cost, and being able to special summon a Fiendsmith from our deck, in which case we'll use the original Fiendsmith. We're then going to go ahead and use the Fiendsmith in our graveyard to be able to put back the Requiem into our extra deck and summon itself out. We're going to overlay these 2 into a copy of Beatrice. Beatrice effect will detach one of the Fiendsmiths to be able to send a copy of Transaction Rollback from our deck to the graveyard, which you know what's going to happen. We're going to go ahead to our end phase right now, and obviously we can do a bunch of other plays as well. It just depends if this is our only card in our hand. We have the FTK, because in our opponent's draw phase, we can go ahead and use the effect of the Beatrice, sending our copy of Ghost Meets Girl, which we're then going to be able to use by banishing our copy of Rollback and paying half of our life points. So we're going to take 4,000 here and apply the effect of Ghost Meets Girl. So Ghost Meets Girl makes so that our opponent, or neither player rather, can special summon monsters from the hand, deck, or extra deck for the rest of the turn, which is basically an FTK essentially because your opponent can't really set up a board unless they're playing a very specific deck like maybe Fluandereeze, or they're playing something like a Labyrinth deck that just relies on setting a bunch of back row. Not every Labyrinth deck even does that nowadays. So just that being said, this 1 card gets us an OTK, or an FTK rather, which is absolutely insane, and we still get to do a ton of other things, and we still have a ton of different cards in our hand to be able to just go through our regular plays. And if we have another engine that can get potentially a negate beforehand to just insulate us from Nibiru, that'd be great because the Beatrice here is our 5th summon, so we have to keep that in mind. Moving on to our next combo here. This one here is a 2 card combo. It's revolving the Fiendsmith Tractus and a discard here, and you can do this exact same combo I'm showing you here with the copy of the original, the Fiendsmith rather, which works really well, but I want to showcase how you do it if you have the spell card instead. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by using the effect of the field spell here, adding a copy of the Fiendsmith itself, discarding the blank card, in this case the Imperm. We're going to use the effect of the Fiendsmith here, discarding it to be able to add our copy of Sanctus, which is going to give us a token once we activate it. It's a light fiend token, which is a big deal. So we're going to link that card off into our copy of the Requiem here. Requiem, we're going to use its effect, attributing itself to summon out a Fiendsmith from their deck. We're going to use the effect of the Fiendsmith as well, summoning it out to our side of the field by putting the Requiem back in the deck, and then we're going to be able to overlay again into our copy of the Beatrice, which again gets us to the exact same line. Or what we can do is we can do the exact same line, but instead of going to Beatrice here, we can go into something like the, there we go, DDD Wave Hiking Caesar. So now in this case here, if we have a deck that is really weak to Nibiru, we can go easily into Caesar here, which is going to give us an amazing negate, or two negates rather, which is just a fantastic option. The fact that these guys are fiend monsters is really good. It's a huge deal and really impacts how the deck can play and how the engine can actually work. And honestly, for an engine that's going to be at the worst case 5-6 cards, it's really, really good to have this engine. And the last combo I'm going to show off is going to be when we pair it with the Unchained cards. Now to do this, you're going to need a copy of the Fiendsmith plus any of the Unchained spells or traps. In this case, we're going to go with Escape. Doesn't really matter here. I do want to remind you guys, I'm not an Unchained player by any means, so this combo is not going to be perfect, but it is going to be still something that works decently well, and you're free to adjust it as you see fit. So we're going to start off by activating the effect of the Fiendsmith and going through our main combo, the one I showed you originally. So we're going to get our copy of Lurry, we're going to discard the Lurry to summon it back, link off into the copy of the Requiem. The Requiem is going to use its effect, summon the Fiendsmith from the deck. Fiendsmith will send back the Requiem, and in this case here, instead of going to a rank 6, we're going to go into a link 2 copy of the Yama. Now, Yama is going to activate its effect on summon to get us a copy of any Unchained monster. In this case, it will be Aruha. We're going to go ahead and set the copy of Escape here. We're going to go ahead and use the copy of Aruha, popping the Escape, summoning it out, and then trigger the copy of Escape to summon from our deck a copy of the Sarama. Sarama is going to use its effect as well, setting the copy of Escape, and then popping the copy of Aruha, which will summon from the deck our copy of the Shayama, excuse me, not Sharbara. And then we're going to go ahead and use a copy of Shayama, popping our copy of Sarama, which will then summon from our deck the Sharvara. So now we have 2 level 6s on the field. We can go ahead and link off into our copy of Xyz rather, into our copy of the DDD, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to link off these 2 into a copy of Rage over here, which we're going to trigger the effect of the Sharvara. Sharvara is going to go ahead and set our copy of Prison, which we're then going to be able to use our copy of the Shayama in Graveyard, popping the Rage to summon it out. We're then going to trigger the copy of Rage to add the Sharvara back to our hand, use the Sharvara here, popping our copy of the Prison to summon it out. Prison effect will activate, well, I've skipped a step here, but we're going to summon out the DDD, but Prison will activate first. Okay, just a reminder, Prison will activate first. We're going to get our copy of Aruha here, and then we're going to be able to go into our copy of the Wave Hiking Caesar, and that's going to be basically our board here. Obviously, this is not necessarily the best possible end board that you can do. I'm, again, not the most familiar with Unchained combos, but it definitely gets you there because we still have our normal summon as well. So essentially, you're adding in 3 more starters to the deck, which means, in my opinion, with this package, you don't have to play the copy of the DDD contract. You don't have to play that at all on the deck anymore because one of them is actually a brick, and well, the Fabled Lurry is annoying, but if you end up getting a copy of the Fiendsmith, you actually are able to then get the copy of Tractus, which will then discard the Lurry as well, which can then get that into rotation too. So it's not really like a true brick. It is slightly, but not that big of one. So now that you've seen the combos, what are some cards that are going to be really good against this specific engine? Well, first things first, if you're really worried about like the Beatrice engine exactly, like the combo to get the Ghost Meets Girl line going, well then pretty much any hand trap in the game actually beats that. If you have Ash Blossom or Infinite Impermanence, that's a huge deal because they need to resolve the effect of Beatrice twice to be able to get the combo online. It's also really good if you have Nibiru, for example, because the Beatrice is the 5th summon, meaning you can nib them. Sure, they'll get one of the Ghost Meets Girl or the Transaction Rollback in the graveyard, but they can't get them both, which is a really big deal. Droll and Lockbird is also a very strong card against this engine. If they start with a Fiendsmith, for example, or a copy of Tractus, they both times have to search at least twice to be able to get the engine online. So if you hit them with the Droll and Lockbird on the first search, then you're in a great position. I also want to shout out DD Crow and the Bestials, which are both amazing for the same reason. They interrupt the effect of the Fiendsmith to summon itself back. If your opponent tries to use the effect of the Fiendsmith to put the Requiem back into the deck, and you then Bestial the Fiendsmith itself, they no longer have a level 6 on the field. I do want to say, just keep in mind that using a Bestial may be a little bit difficult. If they have a Talents, for example, to take it, they can still go for their Beatrice line, which is going to be really tricky. So here's what a very basic Unchained Fiendsmith deck would look like. Obviously, it's not a completely refined strategy, and we are playing a bit of a heavier Fiendsmith package here, but you can definitely make adjustments as well. But 3 copies of the Fiendsmith, 3 copies of Tractus with the 1 Sanctus, and the 1 Fabled Lurry as well. And then we have, of course, our Unchained package with a bunch of different hand traps. We have 10 non-engine, plus our 2 copies of Talents and the 3 copies of Thrust for consistency's sake. In the extra deck, of course, we have the Fiendsmith cards here as well, the level 9, the level 6 fusions, as well as the Link 1 and Link 2. We also have then our Unchained package, 2 Yama, 2 Rage, 1 Anguish, 1 SP, 1 Muckraker, as well as 1 Griffin, 1 Unchained Abomination, the 1 DDD Wave Hacking Caesar, and the 1 copy of Typhon as well. In the side deck right now, I just have the Beatrice with the Transaction Rollback package to try and get the OTK. And then, of course, we have the 1 copy of Photon Strike Bouncer here. This I have just specifically as another option to show off to you guys, just in case you didn't want to have DDD Wave Hacking Caesar as your only option for a rank 6 negate. You do have access to Bouncer if you really want to, but again, it's not the best option. I'd say that because they're Fiend monsters specifically, you're better off going into the Wave Hacking Caesar. Now, obviously, this deck needs to be refined a little bit. There's a lot of things I would maybe change in the strategy. You can possibly just drop this package down pretty significantly to bring it down to 2 copies. Or 1 copy rather of the Tractus with the 1 copy of Lure. You can go with the small engine this way. You can get rid of potentially the fusions, and then you can just have the even the Link 2. You can just go with the 1 copy of the Link 1, and you should be good to go. But really, you'll have a lot of room to work with. It's a small engine that works really well. I think it's a fantastic option to pair with Unchained and so many other different strategies, including Magical Musket and of course Fabled as well. But hopefully we get more additional cards in the Fiendsmith engine, which will lead to a lot of a interesting way to play the game as well. If we do get more Fiendsmith cards, I'm really hoping that one of them ends up being a monster that's level 4 or lower, also a light and a fiend monster that can be easily summoned out, so you can then go into the Requiem without using the effect of the Fiendsmith and be able to just go through the line that way to kind of help play around through Droll and Lockbird. Now let me know what you think about the Fiendsmith archetype down in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts on them, of course. I am really excited for this archetype. I think it's going to be a fantastic breath of fresh air to Yu-Gi-Oh! It will be a great inclusion to a lot of different decks. I am going to be a little annoyed if the Beatrice FTK is going to be legal still, but hey, we'll see what happens on the upcoming ban lists. But that being said, guys, if you guys enjoyed the video, then make sure to leave a like on the video. Remember, if we hit 250 likes, then every time a new archetype comes out like this, I'll bring a video similar to this one on what that archetype can actually do at full power and when other support cards come out to it as well. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and join the Discord server. The link is down in the description, and of course, subscribe to the channel as well. We're getting so close to 10,000 subscribers, and we cannot get there without your help. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time.